Mira Solon sat hunched over a translucent schematic, her silver hair catching the glow as her slender fingers traced the delicate lines of a design older than any she had encountered before. Around her, the murmurs of the crew faded into a distant hum, the world narrowing to the intricate blueprint unfolding beneath her gaze. This changes everything, Myra whispered to herself, breath catching. The blueprint detailed a device unlike any known to modern Skyfold engineers, a dormant core, capable of stabilizing, or, if misused, disrupting the very energy that kept the continent afloat. For years, legends had whispered of such technology, but none had dared to believe it real. Elara Voss approached quietly, her sharp eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and concern. "What have you found?" Myra looked up, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside her. A legacy buried deep beneath the lost Skylands. This device, it's the heart of Skyfold's existence. If we can harness it, we might secure peace for the shifting borders. But if it falls into the wrong hands, Elara's jaw tightened. The recent skirmishes with Captain Rivencale's forces were still fresh scars on their resolve. We must be cautious. This knowledge makes us a beacon for every faction hungry for power. The weight of responsibility settled heavily between them. Elsewhere on the airship, Tauren Vex paced the corridors, his broad frame tense beneath the dim lighting. His piercing blue eyes darted to every shadow, every whispered conversation among the crew. The revelation had spread like wildfire, igniting debates and fears. Tauren's role as protector had never felt more crucial. In the mess hall, a heated conversation unfolded between Mira and Yarrick Thorn. The rugged pilot, with his sun-bleached hair and scarred visage, leaned forward, voice low but intense. "You want to share this with the factions?" Yarrick asked, skepticism clear in his tone. "That's a death sentence for us all." Myra met his gaze evenly. "Secrecy may keep us safe for now, but ignorance could doom Skyfold. We need allies, not enemies." Yarrick's jaw clenched. "Trust is earned in these skies, Mira, and right now, you're asking for a leap into the unknown." The tension between them was palpable, a clash of pragmatism and idealism, of caution and hope. Back in the observation deck, Elara stood alone, staring out at the swirling mists encasing the floating islands below. Thunder rumbled softly in the distance, echoing the turmoil within her. The discoveries made by Mira had opened a door to possibilities and dangers alike. How they walked through it would decide not just the expedition's fate, but that of Skyfold itself. As night deepened, the crew gathered for a council. Voices rose and fell, arguments punctuated by the weight of Myra's findings. Elara listened, balancing the need for transparency against the imperative of security. The fragile alliances that had carried them this far now teetered on the brink of fracture. "We stand at a crossroads," Elara declared, her voice clear and commanding. "The legacy uncovered is a gift, but also a burden. We must protect it, not just for ourselves, but for all who call Skyfold home." The crew nodded, some reluctantly, others with fierce determination. The path ahead was uncertain, tangled with political intrigue and the shadow of conflict. Yet within the unease, a spark of hope flickered, a chance to redefine the future of their world. But as Myra returned to her work, the flickering lights cast long shadows on the walls, and the distant rumble of thunder grew louder. The scholar's legacy was now a beacon, drawing eyes from far and wide, heralding a new chapter in the ever-shifting saga of the floating continent. And the skies of Skyfold would never be the same. The chapter closed with the whispered question lingering in the air. How long could the fragile peace hold before the storms of ambition and fear tore it apart? The answer, Elara knew, would come on the winds of change. Tauren Vex stood at the prow of the flagship, his broad shoulders braced against the biting wind that whipped past his weathered face. His piercing blue eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and unyielding, tracing every ripple in the clouds, every flicker of light that might betray an approaching foe. The scars etched across his skin told stories of battles past, but today, there was a different kind of tension in the air, of foreboding that unsettled even his seasoned instincts. Behind him, the crew busied themselves with final preparations. Elara Voss moved with quiet purpose, her dark braid swaying as she consulted her maps and instruments. Yarrick Thorn lounged near the helm, fingers drumming impatiently on the rail, his sun-bleached hair tangled from the wind. Mira Solin, ever the scholar, adjusted her tools in the engine room, readying for the technical challenges that might arise. But it was Tauren who held the weight of security on his broad shoulders. Suddenly, a sharp crack shattered the relative calm volley of cannon fire bursting from the swirling storm clouds to port. Explosions erupted along the side of a smaller airship, sending shards of wood and metal scattering like deadly hail. The fleet jolted, alarms blaring through the decks as the crew scrambled to battle stations. Two arms, Tauren's voice cut through the chaos, commanding and resolute. Defend the fleet. Keep your positions tight. His bellow was met with rapid response, crews manning cannons, adjusting sails, and readying grappling hooks. Elara moved swiftly to the command center, her sharp eyes meeting Tauren's. Report, she demanded. Ambush from the East mercenaries. Likely scouts for Kael's forces, Tauren replied, already calculating their next move. The air crackled with energy as the enemy ships emerged from the storm's edge, sleek and deadly, bearing the black flags of mercenary bands. Tauren directed the flagship's gunners with precise orders while coordinating with Yarrick, who took to the skies in his swift fighter craft, weaving through the maelstrom to intercept attackers. The battle was fierce and unrelenting. Tauren's voice rose above the roar of cannon fire and the howling wind, rallying his comrades with a mix of stern commands and fierce encouragement. Hold the line. Protect the engines. Don't let them breach the hull. In the engine room, Myra's hands flew over the controls, repairing damage caused by stray fire. Tauren descended briefly to cover her, his presence a steady shield against any boarding attempts. Their silent coordination spoke volumes, Truss, forged not just in words, but in action. Minutes stretched like hours as the skirmish raged. Eventually, the mercenaries faltered, repelled by the fleet's organized defense and Tauren's unyielding vigilance. The storm clouds began to break, rays of pale sunlight piercing the grey veil. Tauren returned to the deck, surveying the battered but intact fleet. His jaw was set, eyes scanning for lingering threats. Around him, the crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, yet the mood remained somber. The attack was a stark reminder. Peace in Skyfold was as fragile as the clouds themselves. Elara approached, placing a reassuring hand on Tauren's shoulder. You held us together out there. The crew trusts you more than ever. Tauren nodded, a rare softness in his gaze. I'm no hero, Elara, just doing what must be done. But we'll need to be ready. This was only the beginning. As the fleet regrouped, whispers circulated among the crew about the rising threats beyond the horizon. The fragile balance of power in Skyfold was shifting, and guardians like Tauren would be vital to weather the storms yet to come. Night fell over the floating continent, the stars sparkling cold and distant. Below, the airships rested, battered but unbroken. Above, the skies held secrets and dangers in equal measure. Tauren stood watch once more, a silent sentinel amid the drifting clouds, ready to defend the fragile hope that bound them all together. Yet, even as peace settled, the question lingered like a shadow in the back of every mind. How long could they hold the skies against the gathering storm? The answer, like the skies of Skyfold, remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. The guardians of the sky would not falter without a fight. Inside the command cabin, Elara Voss sat hunched over a scattering of intercepted communications, her sharp eyes scanning the shifting cryptic patterns. The glow of the star charts on the console cast a pale light across her weathered face, illuminating the tight set of her jaw and the intensity in her gaze. Outside, the distant rumble of turbulent air currents echoed the unrest brewing not only in the skies, but within the political heart of the floating continent. Another message, Lena Orris murmured from her station, fingers dancing over the signal interception devices. This one's encrypted in a new cipher. Someone doesn't want us to hear. Elara nodded, her thoughts racing. The peace forged after the hard battles to reclaim the lost Skylands was fragile, and beneath the surface, old rivalries festered. The very factions that had once fought openly were now weaving webs of deceit and subterfuge, threatening to unravel everything the expedition had achieved. Yarrick, Elara called, her voice low but firm. "I need you on the sky bridge. There's an envoy arriving from the Southern Isles. They're not here for pleasantries." Yarrick Thorne strode into the cabin with his usual brash confidence, the scar over his left eye tightening as he caught the tension in Elara's voice. "I'll make sure they leave with more questions than answers." The sky bridge was a narrow, swaying platform suspended between Sovereign and the neighboring airship horizon's edge. The wind whipped through Yarrick's sun-bleached hair as he awaited the envoy's approach. When the figure emerged from the Meester tall, cloaked diplomat with eyes cold as steel, Yarrick's hand rested on the hilt of his blade. "You're far from home, envoy," Yarrick said, his tone a dangerous mix of challenge and warning. The envoy smiled thinly. "I come bearing offers of alliance, but trust is a currency as volatile as the skies we fly." Meanwhile, within the Sovereign's dimly lit chamber, Myra Solon and Tauren Vex pored over a recently discovered document, its aged parchment crackling softly under their careful hands. The text detailed a secret alliance between a faction of Sky pirates and a mercenary company loyal to Captain Riven Kale. The implications were dire, an organized threat capable of striking at the heart of the reclaimed territories. "We need to alert Elara," Mira said, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "If this alliance holds, it could undo months of progress." Tauren's piercing blue eyes narrowed. "And it means we'll have to be ready for a fight, not just with Kale's fleet, but with those who hide behind political facades." Back in the command cabin, Elara reviewed the intercepted messages again. The ciphers began to reveal patterns, coordinates, meeting times, veiled threats that painted a picture of a conspiracy reaching deep into the highest echelons of Skyfold's factions. The enemy was no longer just the Sky Pirates in open battle, but ghosts lurking in shadows, manipulating events to their advantage. Elara's mind raced to strategies. She understood the delicate balance she had to maintain. Expose the traitors and protect her crew without shattering the alliances she had fought so hard to build. The line between friend and foe blurred in the shifting skies. Lena, keep monitoring all channels. Mira, Tauren, prepare contingencies. Yarrick, your task is to keep the envoy occupied but watch for signs of betrayal. Each member of the crew nodded, the weight of their roles pressing down like the heavy clouds outside. As the evening deepened, the Sovereign sailed on through the unseen storms of political intrigue, a beacon of hope and defiance in the uncertain expanse. Hours later, Elara stood alone on the observation deck, the cold wind tugging at her braid as she gazed into the swirling clouds below. The distant lights of rival airships blinked like wary eyes watching from the darkness. She whispered to herself, "We've reclaimed the skies, but can we hold them when the greatest threats come not from above, but from within?" A sudden alert snapped her attention back. Lena's voice crackled over the comms. Multiple encrypted transmissions detected coordinates match the Secret Alliance's meeting point. "They're moving tonight." Elara's heart tightened. The unseen threats were mobilizing, and the true battle for Skyfold's future was about to begin. But this time, it would be a fight fought with shadows and secrets as much as with steel and fire. With a determined breath, Elara gathered her crew. "Prepare for what's coming. We protect what we've earned, not just with courage, but with cunning. The skies belong to those who dare to watch the unseen." The night deepened, and in the heart of Skyfold, the game of power took a darker turn, weaving a web that would test every bond, every trust, and every hope the expedition carried. The unseen threats had arrived, and the skies would never be the same. The floating continent of Skyfold stretched before her, a vast expanse of drifting islands and swirling mists that promised both danger and opportunity. The first strands of sunlight pierced the lingering fog, painting the clouds in hues of gold and rose. Around her, the fleet hummed softly, airships bobbing gently against their moorings, their crews already stirring to prepare for the day ahead. Yarrick Thorne was already there, leaning casually against the railing with his arms crossed. His sun-bleached hair tousled by the breeze and the familiar scar over his left eye catching the light. Despite his usual bravado, there was a rare seriousness in his gaze as he watched the awakening sky. Elara approached silently, her footsteps muffled by the wooden planks beneath. "Morning," Yarrick said without turning, his voice low but steady. "Morning," Elara replied, standing beside him. For a moment, they simply watched the horizon together, the silence between them carrying the weight of unspoken words. The uneasy alliance forged through months of perilous flights and bitter arguments had begun to evolve into something more, something neither had expected but both needed. "You ready for today's flight?" Yarrick asked finally, glancing sideways. Elara nodded. "We have to be. The new data from Myra suggests the shifting currents near the northern borders are stabilizing just enough for us to establish a forward base. If we can secure it, the factions will have to reckon with us." Yarrick smirked. "We might even make a name for ourselves beyond just survivors." Elara allowed a brief smile. "That's the hope." They spent the next hour finalizing preparations with the crew. Inside the cramped navigation room, Elara and Kes Marlowe bent over the star charts, the young apprentice's eyes wide with concentration. The flickering lantern light cast dancing shadows on the walls, illuminating the intricate markings of ancient maps, blending with newly gathered reconnaissance. "See here," Elara pointed to a cluster of symbols near a drifting island. "This is where Myra believes the old Skyland technology is buried. If we can harness it, it could shift the balance of power." Kes nodded eagerly. "I want to help find it." Before they could delve deeper, the door opened and Myra Solon stepped in, her silver hair catching the light as she held out a small metallic device. "I think I've found a way to amplify our signal range," Myra said, her voice calm and precise. "It could give Lena an edge in intercepting enemy communications." Elara's eyes lit up with renewed hope. "Excellent. Every advantage counts." Outside, the wind began to pick up, carrying the scent of rain and ozone. Garrick's voice crackled over the comm. "All hands, prepare for immediate departure. We're taking the swift ships out for a reconnaissance sweep." Elara joined Yarek aboard his flagship, the engines roaring to life beneath them. The airship lurched forward, slicing through the thickening clouds. The rush of wind whipped against their faces, the roar of the engines blending with the howling gale that swept across Skyfold. "Hold tight," Yarek grinned, navigating deftly through turbulent air currents. Elara steadied herself against the railing, her eyes scanning the horizon where storm clouds churned like restless beasts. "You've got a death wish," she muttered, half in admiration, half in exasperation. "Someone's got to keep you on your toes," he replied with a wink. The flight was tense but exhilarating. Each shift in the wind, every flash of lightning in the distance reminded them of the precarious nature of their mission. Yet, it was in these moments of shared danger that their partnership truly solidified. The barriers of mistrust and rivalry began to crumble beneath the weight of mutual respect and necessity. Back aboard the flagship that evening, the storm finally passed, leaving a calm, star-studded sky overhead. In the quiet of the captain's quarters, Elara and Yarek found themselves alone. The soft flicker of candlelight casting warm shadows. "I never thought we'd get here," Yarek admitted, his voice softer than usual. "After everything," Elara nodded. "Neither did I, but we have to. For the crew, for Skyfold." "I'm sorry I pushed so hard," he said, eyes meeting hers. "I was scared of losing control. I was scared of failing again," Elara confessed. "But maybe together, we're stronger than our fears." They shared a long look, the weight of their shared burdens lifting just enough to glimpse a fragile hope. Outside, the floating continent shimmered under the moonlight, its endless skies holding promises of new challenges and uncharted territories. Elara and Yarek, once reluctant allies, now prepared to lead Skyfold into a new era, united by trust, tempered by trials, and driven by a vision that stretched as far as the horizon itself. But as the stars blinked overhead, a distant shadow stirred beyond the known skies. A reminder that the flight of trust was only the beginning of a far greater journey. Intricate carvings of winged creatures and celestial maps adorned the walls, glowing faintly under the soft luminescence of hovering lanterns. Delegates from the various factions of Skyfold had gathered here, their faces a mixture of wariness, hope, and exhaustion. The air was thick with anticipation, the weight of countless unspoken grievances and fears hanging palpably among them. Elara Voss stood at the edge of the circular table etched with glowing topographical maps of the floating continent. Her sharp eyes scanned the faces around her leaders of explorers, sky pirates, mercenaries, and scholars, all bound by necessity to this moment. Beside her, Yarek Thorn shifted his weight restlessly, the tangle of sun-bleached hair catching the lantern light, his scarred left eye narrowing thoughtfully. They had come far from the chaotic flights and battles that had marked their journey. But here, in this suspended sanctuary, a new kind of battle was about to be waged, one of words, wills, and fragile promises. Captain Riven Kale sat across the table, his tall frame imposing even in the dim light. The mechanical arm resting on the surface clinked softly as he adjusted his position, his cold grey eyes meeting Elara's with a challenging stare. Despite their opposition, the necessity of peace had drawn him here, a reluctant partner in a truce that none fully trusted. "We all know why we're here," Elara began, her voice steady but carrying the gravity of the moment. "Skyfold cannot survive fractured. Not if we want to chart a future beyond endless conflict." Murmurs rippled through the room, some nods, some skeptical glances. Yarek stepped forward, his voice carrying the rough edge of a pirate accustomed to command. "Freedom has its price," he said bluntly, "but lawless skies breed only death. We need balance, a way to keep the skies open but safe. Captain Kale's lips curled into a thin smile. Balance, he echoed, or control disguised as order. Elara met his gaze without flinching. Control that ensures survival, not tyranny. Negotiations stretched long into the floating night. Mira, Solon, and Torin, Vex moved quietly among the gathered groups, sharing insights and calming tensions. Myra's expertise in ancient technologies became a key bargaining chip, revealing that the lost Skylands held powers far beyond mere territory powers that could shift the balance of Skyfold forever. Outside, the wind whispered through the rigging of anchored airships, carrying the scent of ozone and rain. Lena Oris maintained a vigilant watch on communications, intercepting coded messages that hinted at factions still plotting behind closed doors. The fragile peace was a thread stretched taut. Hours passed, alliances forged and broken in the delicate dance of diplomacy. When at last the Skyfold Accord was laid out, a treaty that recognized the sovereignty of multiple factions while mandating shared stewardship of key Skylands, relief and tension mingled in the chamber. Elara and Yarrick stood on the deck of their flagship as flags representing the newly allied factions fluttered side by side. The sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the floating continent. Yet beneath the surface of celebration, both knew the Accord was but a pause in the ongoing struggle for Skyfold's future. "It's a start," Yorick murmured, eyes scanning the horizon where distant fleets still lurked. "But peace in these skies is always a storm away from shattering." Elara nodded, her gaze steady and resolute. "Then we'll be ready. This is our home now. We protect it together." As the dawn painted the clouds in hues of pink and gold, the Skyfold Accord stood as a beacon of hope and an uneasy promise. The floating continent was poised on the edge of a new era, one where freedom and order must coexist, or the skies would claim them all. But beneath the hopeful surface, shadows stirred. Old rivalries, hidden agendas, and the restless ambitions of men like Captain Kale whispered of challenges yet to come. For in Skyfold, the line between ally and enemy was as shifting and unpredictable as the winds themselves. Elara turned away from the rising sun, her braid catching the light. The campaign had reached a pivotal moment, but her journey was far from over. The greatest trials still awaited, and with them, the chance to truly claim her place among the clouds. "Prepare the crews," she said quietly to Yarrick. "The skies are changing, and so must we." He grinned, the familiar spark of adventure lighting his eyes. "Lead the way, Captain." Together, they faced the horizon, the endless expanse of Skyfold stretching before them, full of promise, peril, and the uncharted paths of tomorrow. And as the floating continent breathed beneath them, the story of the Skyfold campaign surged onward, folding like the vast, ever-shifting skies themselves.